Welcome to episode 13 of Career Pro Tips by Life in the Green Room. Life in the Green Room is all about helping busy professionals who want more out of their career. We provide action-oriented, tool-based plans to help you start navigating your career in the direction that you want to go. And Career Pro Tips is our weekly video series where we dive into something that's tangible and you can take action on right away. My name is Heather Green McLinn, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing at a Fortune 500 company. I've used these tools throughout my career, and I still use them today. I've seen my team and my peers use them, and I know they will help you too. Implementing a few things with some intentional planning will help you start navigating your career in the direction you want. Today, in episode 13, we're going to talk about some basics to giving a killer presentation. And I think that these will be helpful regardless of if you're a seasoned presenter or this is new for you. So maybe you don't give presentations very often and you have an opportunity coming up. Or maybe this is a bigger audience or higher stakes of a bigger ask. You really want to put your best foot forward and give the best presentation that you can. I have a few things for you to think about as you're preparing. The first thing that I want you to think about is how to be clear with your content. And I'll talk about what I mean with that here in a minute. Then I want to talk about the flow of what you're going to actually present. I want to talk about practicing for your presentation. And then I want to talk about questions. And I have a bonus tip at the end if you stick around. But let's start with the first four. So the first one is about being clear with your content. So many times I see people who are just so entrenched in what they're doing, they know all the details, and they just dive into the middle of the topic, and they forget to understand where their audience is at. So when you sit down to start your presentation with your content, I want you to take a minute, think about who's in the audience, how close are they to this project, what do they actually know? You may need to start at an extremely high level to kind of get everyone on the same page for what you're talking about. It is your job to know all of the details, but it is not your job to tell everyone all of the details. One of the best things that you can do as the presenter is to curate the content and only share what they really need to know to get to the next level. So when you're sitting down to be clear about your content, think about who your audience is. Also, be really specific about what you're trying to get out of this presentation. Is it simply to update them on progress? Are you asking for more funding? Are you asking for approval for another phase? Like, what is the ask of your presentation? And if you start with those two pieces, you're already going to have a much more appropriate flow. So knowing your audience and figuring out what you're asking. And then based on that, start to map out the content that is appropriate to share and make sure it builds up to your goal. So first tip when you're giving a presentation is to really be clear on the content that you want to be sharing. The second tip is for you to think about the flow of your presentation. So you know your audience and you know your ask. What is the best way that you can structure your content to make sure everybody's engaged, they get the information in the right sequence so they can understand and they can make a clear and logical choice. There's a really tried and true method out there that I'm going to share with you. It can always be a go-to for you. It's pretty straightforward. It is tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. I know it sounds very similar, but the essence of that structure and flow is to start with the summary, start with where you're going with the project, give them all the background of what's leading you up to that, reiterate what the point of the presentation was, and include your ask in there. So tell them what you're going to tell them. Okay, what's your goal for the day? Where are you trying to get them? Tell them, give them the background and the content that's appropriate that builds up to your ask. Tell them what you told them. Give them the summary and reiterate what you need, whether that, again, is the next phase or funding or an update or whatever. That flow will help you be very logical and clear with the content that you need to share. The next thing on my list was practice. So I want you to practice. I want you to feel comfortable, know your content, but don't memorize it. You're going to do yourself and your audience a disservice. You can get thrown off way too easily, and then you can't get back on track because you didn't find your way back to that specific place because it was memorized. Just know your points on each slide, know the stories you want to tell, and let it flow naturally in the conversation. The fourth thing I want you to do to get ready for a killer presentation is to think about the questions that you're going to get. You've already been thinking about the audience that you have in there. So what are they likely to ask? So if you're presenting to an all numbers group, they're going to ask you a lot of numbers questions. So know those cold. If you're presenting to some really high level structure thinkers, make sure you know how this fits into the bigger puzzle of how tools work in the business. So anticipate what questions they're going to ask. When you do that, if it's a question that is so obvious and you're like, I guarantee I'm going to get that question, maybe you build it right into your presentation to try to put that information forward. Then you have the next layer of questions you think you're going to get. Practice those answers, know them, put them in the presentation if you want to, but just get your head around, you will get questions. And depending on the style of your company, you might get interrupted and have questions right out of the gate, or maybe they'll save them for the end. Think about how the audience is likely to interact with you so you're prepared. So my bonus tip for you to give a killer presentation is to have some confidence when you go into your presentation. You know that information better than anybody else in that audience, so have some confidence when you go in there. Know that you are going to be able to do a great job. And it's fine if you're nervous. Once you get going, the nerves are going to drop, you're going to feel more comfortable, and you are just going to kill this presentation. So that's what I have as far as high-level basic tips to make sure you have a killer presentation. The one is get crystal clear on your content by knowing your audience and what to share with them. The second is to make sure your flow is really clear and everyone can follow what you have to share. The third is to practice but don't memorize. And the fourth is to get ready for your question. And my bonus tip was to feel really confident and just go in there saying, I have a lot to share with this audience and I can help them answer any questions that they have. So that's what I have for you today for your basic tips on giving a killer presentation, and I would love to hear from you. Have you tried any of these tips? Do you have any other ones that work for you? Let me know. If you have any other topics you would like to be covered in Career Pro Tips, leave me a comment, and please subscribe here for your weekly updates. Until next week, here's to owning your career journey.